I consistently rank at the top of Google for what it is that I target, and I did it without paying for a single ad. And from what I hear from the people who contact me, they are also discovering me through ChatGPT. So today I want to share how it is that I was able to do that. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. There is that saying that if you build it, they will come, but what if they can't find you? And that is why it was really important to me to share this episode, because I think that there is often just so much talent out there in terms of businesses and personal branding. But if people can't find you, then they will never be able to connect with that talent, which is why I really wanted to simply just share today what worked for me. So while I have a background of 15 years in marketing, branding, communications, it was really just learning what it is that I'm going to share with you today that really helped me when I went out and started to build my own brand and really had to start from scratch, not working for a big iconic brand that people knew already, but actually having to build that from the ground up and how I was able to do that. And I think sometimes the conversation around search engine optimization can get really complicated. So what I'm going to share today are just the really simple ways that I was able to personally do this, so that hopefully if you are trying to apply this to your business or to grow your personal brand, that some of these things might be helpful for you as well. What really originally made me want to learn search engine optimization to the extent that I did was learning the story of Nagi, who has the blog here in Australia, Recipe Teen Eats. And you may have even heard of her if you are tuning in from overseas, because she has become an absolute global sensation, and she originally worked in finance, so moving into the blogging space was something that was very different for her. And I remember hearing as a part of her story that one of the things that she prioritized more than anything was search engine optimization. That was her priority in learning how her blog could actually succeed. And she was a business person. She actually put this into her business plan from what I understood. And she went from the launch day of her blog, having just her and her mum being the only visitors to her website, to being the absolute global sensation that she has become, the best-selling author that she has become now. And so that is what I think the power of search engine optimization can do for just the average everyday person. So let's dive into my first tip, and that is to determine what your target SEO words and phrases are. So you have to be able to put yourself into the mindset of your audience. What is it that they would be typing into their search engines? What are they physically putting into Google? What is that question that they are asking? What are those keywords that they are putting in? I like to try and keep this super simple. For example, it would be personal branding Adelaide, Australia, or personal branding coach Adelaide is what I would recommend. And the key is also to not be overly broad. So if I was only targeting personal branding, for example, then that is a really broad phrase. It's probably not what people are just putting into Google. They're probably putting in more context than that. And it's also going to be more competitive because there's more people competing for that broad term. So I would suggest trying to find a way to make this a little bit more specific, because the more specific that you get, the less competitive those words are going to be, and also the more relevant it is going to be for the person who is actually searching. So what you want to think about is what is going to appear on the search engine results page, say the SERP page. What is it that they are going to actually see, and how can you be the answer to the query that they had? My next tip is to use long tail SEO phrases. So this is where you might think about getting even more specific with those phrases. For example, instead of just targeting personal branding or personal branding in Adelaide, you might write a blog that is about how to build your personal brand on LinkedIn, because this might also be the response to a particular query. So these are more long tail phrases. Again, this is about trying to compete on something that has lower competition but has a higher search intent. There is something that that person is very clearly looking for that you are able to provide for them. The next tip is to SEO your headline. So this is where you want to think about how you are incorporating what those phrases are that you are targeting into your headline. And remember that headlines have also a hierarchy to them. So you want to make sure that your headline 1, for example, is the most relevant when it comes to the search engine words or the search engine optimization strategy that you have, the phrases that you are trying to target. And when you are coming up with your headline, something to also keep in mind is that usually it is about 50 to 60 characters that will appear in the search engine results before this starts to be cut off. So it's just something to keep in mind, that you might want to make sure that you are putting your most important information at the front end of that headline as well. Which leads into number 4, which is to also search engine optimize your subtitles as well. So if there is a hierarchy to the headlines, you want to make sure that you are continuing to infuse your search engine optimization strategy into the rest of your headlines as well. And what this does is that it also signals to search engines like Google that the communication that you have put together, whether it is a blog post or an article or your web page, is clearly structured, that it is going to be readable and easy to follow for the visitor that they send to you. And in doing this, this also helps Google to understand your website better. So remind yourself that while you understand your content really well, it doesn't actually mean that Google does. You have to train it to understand what it is that you communicate. And so when you continue to infuse your SEO strategy into your different headlines, then you are helping Google to understand that content better as well. Number 5 is to think about your keyword ratio. So this is where you consider how many times the keywords or the key phrases that you are trying to target are infused into your communication. For example, if you write an article that is 1,000 words and you have 10 references to your keywords that you are targeting or your key phrases, then that means that you have a 1% ratio, which is actually good. That is what you are trying to aim for. The benchmark when it comes to your keyword ratio is 1 to 2%. If you go beyond that benchmark, there is a higher risk of being perceived by search engines as engaging in keyword stuffing. So that is where infusion of your keywords and your phrases is coming across in this unnatural way. So you want to make sure that you are as organically as possible infusing those keywords into your communication so that it doesn't have a negative effect on the way that Google and other search engines perceive your communication and your web page. Tip number 6 is to SEO your meta description. So these are the little snippets that appear in the search engines, and you set these up in the back end of your website on the pages or on the posts. And you want to make sure that when you are coming up with these descriptions as well, like with the headlines, that you are keeping in mind what is going to be at the front end of that description, because that is going to be the most important, because it is, I think, around 150 to 170 characters before that preview starts to get cut off. So make sure that you are search engine optimizing those descriptions really smartly as well. Number 7 is to save your files strategically for SEO. So this is where you don't simply just have the default settings of the images or the videos that you have on your computer and upload those to your computer, this is where you actually want to make sure that you are saving them strategically to target what it is that you are targeting as a part of your SEO strategy. So make sure that you are naming all of those files accordingly before you actually upload them. So you'll have the option when you upload them as well to come up with what that description is, or the alt text for that image or that piece of media that you are uploading. But I have heard people recommend to actually save that file to begin with as having the description that you want to have for your website, whatever's going to be the most relevant to you. And this leads nicely into tip number 8, which is to compress your image size. So this might seem counterintuitive, but you don't actually want to be uploading your highest quality videos or images. You want to make sure that they are the web optimized version of those. And that is because if you upload things that are too high a quality, this will slow down your site speed. And site speed is really important when it comes to search engines, because the search engines want to know that when they send someone to your website, that person is going to have a really good experience, and they're not going to have a lot of time waiting for your page to load, because that isn't a great experience. You're likely going to leave, which is going to increase your bounce rate. So you might think about this, for example, as if you recommend a restaurant to a friend. You're likely going to recommend that restaurant because you had a really great experience there. You're not likely going to recommend a restaurant where you had to wait a really long time to your friends, because you know that your friends aren't going to have a great experience. So it's similar in Google and in search engine optimizations, where you want to make sure that if someone is sending you their recommendations, that they are having a good experience, that experience that they had on the page was fast. It met their needs really quickly in the way that Google hoped that it would. And this actually leads into my tip number 9, which is to reduce your bounce rate. And this is probably easier said than done, but it's something just to keep in mind, because you really want to make sure that when that person comes to your website, that the experience that you have provided for them is relevant to what it is that they are looking for. You want to make sure that you match their query, because that is going to indicate to Google that your experience did actually align with what they were looking for. So if you have a really high bounce rate, if people go to your website and are coming off really quickly, then that might show them that perhaps that result wasn't actually relevant. So the longer that you can keep someone on your page, then the better your bounce rate is going to be, and the more that Google and other search engines will know that you are a relevant result. My tip number 10 is to optimize for your location. So while you might have a product or a service that is available, say, worldwide, it might be a more sustainable strategy for you, at least to begin with, to try and target the area that you are in, whether it is the state that you live in or the country that you are in, and try and get results more in that space before you try and target anything bigger than that, because you are likely going to have a more relevant audience as well. It just has a little bit more leverage, I personally find anyway, than trying to just immediately target worldwide. But that's not to say that it's not possible. I actually have people contact me from all over the world, and I don't actually try and target that. So it's just something that's worked for me to target the local area that I am in more so than trying to go big picture. My tip number 11 is to share rich media. So that might be things like videos or audio on your website too, because it just creates a more enriched experience for the person that is visiting your website. And if that person has a more engaging experience, then they are more likely, again, going to stay. So this will help with the bounce rate that we talked about earlier as well. My tip number 12 is to include internal links. So this also relates to the experience that the person on your website is having. Because when you have internal links, then they are more likely going to follow those links to additional pages, which means that they are going to increase the time spent on the page. So the time spent on the page is an important metric. It tells Google that that person is having a good experience, they're hanging around, they're looking at other things as well. And internal links also helps with your overall structure for your website too. This helps Google to understand more about what it is that you communicate, more about your field of expertise, the topic that you are most associated to, or the service or the products that you are most associated to, because it can start to get a better idea as to how those different topics are related, and it can start to hopefully see you as more of an expert in that particular field, because it sees that you communicate this in a holistic way that relates to other things as well. My tip number 13 is to earn backlinks, and this is where you are trying to get other people to link to your website. For me, particularly, I was really fortunate that this just happened organically for me. For example, I did speaking engagements with the major university here in South Australia, with the University of Adelaide, and because they were promoting my speaking event on their website, it meant that this linked back to my website. And a website like a university, for example, a university like this as well, has a lot of domain authority. So domain authority is just how this ranks in terms of Google's perception of a particular website. So because a brand like the University of Adelaide has such high domain authority, by connecting to my website, it's almost like a form of endorsement. It's giving a bit of a tick of approval that Google really appreciates seeing. So it's just something to keep in mind as to if there are ever these opportunities that you can think of that you could try to earn more of those backlinks. Like I said, I was really fortunate that that just happened really organically for me, but it's certainly something that you can keep in mind if it is something that you can actually be a little bit more strategic about as well. Tip number 14 is to keep creating. Now, Google wants to know that you don't just have an inactive website. It wants to know that your website is always being refreshed and updating. And so one of the best ways that I personally think that you can do this is to create content. So if you decide, for example, to commit to uploading a blog every week or whatever schedule you can manage, then you are automatically constantly updating your website. You are constantly telling Google that there is fresh content on your website. You're telling it that it is active. And as a part of that, you are also showcasing your expertise. So whether you decide to write blogs, whether you decide to publish videos and have, say, videos or podcasts and show note pages, then I just think that that is going to continuously build that expertise that you have in a particular area. So you don't just have, for example, your SEO strategy on the homepage of your website. You have it on all of those pages as well. And I just think that that is a much stronger position to be in for your website SEO strategy than to just be sticking to that one page of content or those few key pages as a part of your brand. So as you've probably gathered, SEO isn't some magical skill. For me, it's just about diligence, strategy, and consistency. So I hope that this helps you to be seen and to get discovered by your people. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.